Welcome to the CoachSpeak podcast, built for coaches, by coaches, hosted by Jamie Bolton and Dustin Martin. Sponsored by Ray Crowther, providing the nation's best athletic training equipment since 1932. And R4 Football Systems. Accelerate everything by decoding the game.
Hey guys, welcome back to CoachSpeak. Dustin Martin here with Jamie Bolton. Got a special guest tonight, Coach Matt Quinn, well known throughout the state of South Carolina. But before we get going, I want to shout out to our sponsors, Team Builder, Tsunami Bar Sports, and Pro Quick Draw.
Yeah, guys, today's guest is one of the most proven program builders in high school football. Matt Quinn has taken over multiple programs and turned them into winners, including leading Westwood to his first region title in school history and building championship-level teams North Augusta. Now, as the head coach at Averett University, he's bringing that same blueprint to the college level. Coach Quinn is known for building culture fast, developing players, and creating programs that sustain success. Coach, we're fired up for this one, and this is going to be a little different, so we're excited to have you on.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me, man. It's an honor to be here, and I've enjoyed y'all's shows so far, and some of your past guests have dropped some good knowledge, so hopefully I can help somebody along the way as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for our listeners out there, we're going to kind of do something a little bit different. We're going to kind of do some simulation stuff and then go into some case studies. So, Coach, you got hired today, let's say, okay, new program, new staff, new locker room. Talk a little bit about how that first 30 days looks for you.
Well, first and foremost, we're going to start by interviewing and meeting with our players one-on-one, especially seniors, leaders. We're going to meet with administration and try to get to what the problem is. Because typically when you walk into these situations, there's something going on. You've got to figure out if it's an academic issue, if it's a culture issue, if it's a schematic issue. You got to figure out where the problem lies. So getting the feedback from the players, from former coaches that have been there, from administrators, from teachers. We want to talk to as many people as we can and collect feedback quickly, so that then we can, get our plan of attack in place for how we want to change the program.
Yeah, it makes sense. And let's kind of do this step by step. So let's first start off with that staff and that culture piece. What are your first meetings look like with your staff? Like, what are you guys digging through if you're going to retain those guys?
Yeah, so we're talking about the expectation, how we practice, how we hold our players accountable, what is expected of them, on a typical week. We kind of simulate what it looks like for meetings, to film time, to install time, to everything that we want to do, because we want them to be ready for when the real world hits, right? I don't want them to be shocked by anything. When we get in the week 4 of the season and we're getting ready for a tough opponent, I want them to know what to expect and how we're going about it. So, just laying those expectations out and really finding out if it's a good fit on both sides. Mm-hmm. There are great coaches that in the past that I've not retained just because it wasn't a good fit. They're a great coach. They went on to have success at other places, but just the fit wasn't there. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no right or wrong from my side or their side, in my opinion. But I think finding that good fit from a staff is extremely important. Whether you're retaining guys or bringing new guys in, they have to understand the expectation and the standard that you're going to set for the program.
Yeah, and I think that's so wise, Coach. It's kind of like a puzzle, man. Just because the piece doesn't fit in your puzzle doesn't mean it won't be a great piece in another puzzle. And, that was something I was super excited about in the spring. I got to work with Jamie on offense, and it's like we know each other so well. Like, I know the expectation of what he's trying to achieve. So when you have someone who can help guide that in the run game, he can focus on the pass game. It's just it's there. And, when you hit that head coaching role, it's how do I have the close enough guys to help me throughout the program? Because, I think it's a lot easier when you're brought on as an assistant coach. Hey, help my expectations on this side of the ball. Well, it's a lot tougher as a head coach when you got to find guys who you can make sure you hire, who can help with the culture piece of everything. No, that's great. So when it comes to players, like when we're looking at players, and obviously this changes from high school to the college level, you have a little bit more say-so depending on what school you are. I mean, high school, some people have say-so on what their rosters look like too these days. But, what are you looking at when it comes to player evaluation? Like, let's start high school and then we can kind of work to college.
Yeah, so on the high school side, you're looking at guys that are already on the team and coming back. You're rising seniors, sophomores, juniors, so on and so forth. And it's the same thing at the college level in this aspect of it. We go in and watch the film, and we're trying to figure out what their best trait is. What is their best quality? He's a tight end, but Is he a blocking tight end? Is he a flex tight end? And we try to fit those pieces into where it's going to give them the best chance to show their strengths, right? We had, back at Westside back in the day, we had a kid that was playing running back, and we kept watching the film, and we found out, I was like, man, this kid could probably play quarterback. Let's see if he can throw. If he can throw at all, he can play. And then he ended up playing quarterback for us and led us to a region championship. So it's just finding the traits that fit your scheme, your system, your methods, and how you want to do it. And you have to go through that diligently throughout the first few days, first 30 days, so to speak, of where guys are going to fit: offense, defense, special teams. There might be some moves that you need to make to fit, and put people in their best situation for them to be successful. There's too many times where I think we try to force a system or force a mold on a player because that's what we want to do as coaches. When really we should flip that and put them in a situation to be successful and adapt to them.
Yeah, we were just talking about that today, actually, like thinking about last year. We got to Rock Hill last year, and we had to kind of go through this process of, where are we going to put these guys and where do they fit? And man, it's hard to evaluate kids without pads on. You're trying to go out there, you're watching film. Maybe this is a kid that doesn't have any varsity film or not even college film, and you're trying to fit all that together. It's very, very difficult. One thing that we started to really lean into is like kind of beyond the talent, and look into like how can we identify leaders? Can we identify some challenging individuals? And so talk to us about that. Have you had any experiences like, okay, thought this guy may be a leader, he actually wasn't, and then or vice versa?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely important. I think so many times we get caught up as coaches in scheme and X's and O's and what we want to run on offense and how we want to run our defense, and we leave off the relationship side, and that's building the leadership and the development of the full human being, right? And I think that's the part that gets often overlooked, especially when you're coming in, you're taking over a program that hasn't had a lot of success. You want to come in there, and there's a lot of young coaches that'll run in and like, this is the offense I want to run. I want to be air raid or whatever, right? And I think we leave out the relationship aspect of it. And so developing that relationship will show you their character, will show you who their leaders are. Like getting to know your players, like what do they like? What do they do? What do they not like? What do they do in their free time? Do they have a girlfriend? Like what are their academics like? So all of those things play into that development of leadership that I think that small step really gets overlooked at times when you're trying to rebuild a program. And to be quite honest with you, that's the most important piece, in my opinion.
Yeah.
X's and O's, like, guys, we could get on a whiteboard and we could draw flex bone, air raid, triple option, whatever you wanted to draw offensively. And the X's and the O's are designed to score, right? That's how we draw it up. Whoever's got the pen last. But what it comes down to is the relationship aspect and the trust and the development of leadership, right? So, like, I remember when I was playing for Coach Bentley, like, there was never a call he made where we were like, that's not going to work. Like, we trusted him, and he trusted us to get it done. Even if it wasn't the perfect call for that coverage or for that front, like, we trusted him. He trusted us to figure it out and get it done. And that comes through that development of relationships and finding out who your leaders are and who can control the huddle and who can control the locker room. So that's the most overlooked piece, because you can run whatever you want schematically. Offense, defense is supposed to work when you draw it. But it comes down to, do you trust the player? Do you communicate well with the player? Does he understand what you're saying? Are you relating with him? And is your quarterback, is your seniors, are your leaders, are your captains able to matriculate that message down the pipe?
Yeah, and I think that's such an important part because, like Jamie mentioned, today we were on the phone driving. Me and him get in these hour talks, and we're like, man, we should just turn the record button on and go from here.
We should just do a podcast.
But we were talking about, he's just asking me all kind of questions about defense. He's like, hey, man, like, how do you feel after this past year? I know you dabbled more with 4-3, 4-2-5, and it's like there's a easy, objective way to determine what does my weak safety need to look like, and then my nickel is going to be based off of that guy. And that's kind of what we're talking about. But I think your point that you're making is we need to have as clear and objective ways also relationships-wise and also who the kid is as a person, just as easy. Okay, I'm looking for these guys on my team. Who's my leaders? Who's the crazy head case, screws loose that is going to play every down of defense, but we got to make sure he's doing the right thing in the classroom. Like, who has probably the biggest heart. He just is a tough mentality kid. And I think having a clear, objective way, the same way that we personnel our scheme and our package, you got to have it schemed out, like, okay, what kids are we looking for? And I think that's kind of what I hear you saying.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you talk about having some of those guys. I mean, defensive guys are the main ones, and some of those offensive linemen get a little wild too. You got to have a good mix, man. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not
you
saying we
do.
want a bunch of church boys out there on the field playing
Right.
defense, but you got to have a mix of crazy and
You do.
sane, right? You got
Yeah.
to have a good mix, and that comes from that relationship aspect. And then when you get to know who they are and how they're wired, then you can pair them up with somebody else on the team that is not as crazy as they are, or somebody that's a leader paired up with this guy. He's super athletic, but we don't know if he's going to show up to study hall, right? Let's pair him up with one of these leaders, right?
That's
So
coaching. I mean,
that definitely is
yeah.
part of the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, that's truly coaching the player, not the game. Like, we are coaching, humans that we're all different. We're human. Like,
Yeah.
I get it all the time. And I guess as we get older, we start to realize that a little bit more. Like, yeah, I mean, we're teaching the details, but man, like, if you can relate with that kid, it can go even further than that. But yeah, coach. So when do you start to introduce, you're in that first 30 days, when do you start introducing like scheme? Like, when does that start coming in for you?
Yeah. So, for example, when I took over at Averett, we started school back in January after Christmas break. January and February was nothing but weight room, leadership, and culture development.
Mhm.
We didn't touch scheme. They went on spring break the first week of March. We didn't touch scheme. We didn't go over X's and O's, how we're going to run anything until we got back from spring break. And again, going back to what we started with, when we started meeting with people and meeting with administrators and players, like, it was a culture thing. It was a brotherhood thing. It was a unity thing. And so they weren't bad players. I mean, they were 1-8 last year, but we didn't have bad players. They just weren't playing together and playing for each other. So we decided that we were going to spend 2 months on weight room, building our
Mhm.
culture through our weight room. And then every day we had a workout, we had some type of leadership lesson, life lesson, vision, goals, like all these things that we talk about in our mottos and our standards. So that's where we attacked it. And then, after the end of the two months, like, kids are starting to get antsy then. Now they're hungry. They want that information from you. They want to know, how are we going to run our offense? And they keep begging and begging. And now you've got them hooked to where they want to come in and learn the offense. So then when we said, all right, tomorrow at 6 a.m., we're having our first offensive and defensive meeting, and nobody misses that one. They've been through the culture side and they've learned so much, and they've got all these videos and quotes and clips and verses and readings that we've been doing with them, right? And now we're like, all right, we're going to start some scheme tomorrow. Nobody missed it because we hooked them in and got them in on the culture side, and now they're hungry for more with the scheme. So for us here, it was 2 months. At the high school level in the past, it's been anywhere from 4 weeks to 6 weeks, to be quite honest with
Mhm.
you, before we even touch scheme. We want to teach them how, the expectation, the standard, how we want to work out, how we want to
Yep.
practice. Like, you can go over all the plays, but if you don't know how, we're an up tempo practice clock, 5-minute periods, bouncing around as fast as we can type team. We want to teach that so that then when they get the scheme, they know how we're going to practice. So we focus on that stuff first. And some people think it's crazy. And I had some assistant coaches like that I retained here that was like looking at me sideways. And I was like, we're not touching scheme until March. And they're like, oh my gosh. But now, like, they see it come to life when we're in the middle of spring practice.
What I think that resonates, like, with someone's scheme also. It's like, it doesn't matter what coverage you play or how you fit the run. If you don't know how to leverage and tackle, it doesn't matter. So if we don't teach them how to leverage the ball or tackle the ball carrier, it doesn't matter what we run. And I think you've taken that outlook for the entire program. If we don't teach them the expectations of who we are and how we do things, what does scheme matter? And
Exactly.
don't get me wrong, end of the day, scheme does matter when you get to the
Oh, yeah.
games, but it's like, if they don't know who we are as an identity first, then
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Because like you said,
Yeah.
they weren't bad last year. It didn't seem like maybe the identity or the brotherhood or whatnot was
Right. It's just like practice, right? You start with an indie period, then you go to pods, and then you go to group, and then you go to tempo, and then you go to team, right? It builds up. And so we treat the culture and the entire program the same way we build it up slowly, and then we hit it full speed. You can't just run out there on day one and go, Rick 4 verts, right? You just can't do that on day one. You got to teach where they're supposed to landmarks on 4 verts and how we're going to drop and what our pass protection is. So you do it piece by piece. So you can't just run in there with a scheme and your culture just like you would with your scheme. So I break it down that way so that our guys understand the expectation and the vision of our program.
Yeah, I love that. And, we came in at Rock Hill last year in like May. And so we had to do both. And the same thing happened with me in 2023 at Kings Mountain. And it was like we come in super late and it's like now we got to do culture and scheme. In both situations, I'm with a new head coach. That's his first year there at that school too. And it's like, man, we got to do culture, we got to do scheme, we got to do practice, we got to do, hey, get to know you. Like there's no time for that. And in both cases, that first year was a struggle in a lot of ways because I felt like we weren't very good at either one. It's like we weren't great at the culture piece, we're not great at the scheme piece. But then the next year, it's like you're saying, you start that foundation, and that foundation is everything rests on how we're going to respond to certain situations, what kind of character, what kind of leadership, and then that scaffolds into like what kind of skill set do we need. And then beyond that, like we haven't touched scheme. We will not install anything with our players until April, and that's in class because we're dead in April. But we won't do anything on the field until May. Like we've done only OTAs. We've only taught them like the routes, how to block, how to tackle, how to run fit. But yeah, we haven't touched like this is what this play is called yet. So I love it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. And you can't control the timing of your hire, right?
Mm-mm.
Sometimes I got to Chesterfield so late. I mean, I got there and the next day, like literally I got there and the next day a 7-on-7 was on the schedule. And so out of respect for the coaches that were hosting the 7-on-7, I didn't want to cancel because then they'd be down a team, whatever. So we rolled into it day one. Like I met the team that morning. I said, all right, guys, get on the bus. And so that's weird.
Yeah.
But then when we got back, then we kind of slowed everything down on the scheme side. You still have to do it because we were in summer. We still had to scheme and install and get everything rolling, but we slowed it down and really focused our input on the culture side. So it was 70-30 for the day. And then as the summer progressed, we slowly started dialing it back the other way. And then the pendulum swung 70-30 of scheme by the time you
Mm-hmm.
get to August, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, how do you like gauge that buy-in like early on? Like what are some things that you look at and say, hey, these guys are bought in or not?
Yeah. So first off, attendance,
Yeah,
right?
that's a
H
big
Are
one.
they
Yep.
showing up?
Commitment.
I mean,
Yep.
that's the easiest
Yep.
way. Are they showing up? 2 is like one of the examples I can use here is like our first week, we had workouts at 6 a.m. Monday morning, and we had guys texting coaches, "Hey, I need a ride. I need a ride." And so, cool. We would go pick them up, bring them to workouts. We've all done that, right? And then the second week, we sent out a group message. Anybody need a ride this week? Couple guys. The numbers went down. The third week, we sent out a message. Hey, anybody need a ride to workouts this week? Let us know. One of the seniors responded and said, "Coach, we got it."
Nice.
And that's when I was like, after the third
Yes.
week, I was like, all right, so we got some leaders stepping up. They're buying in. They're going to take care of their teammates. So that was an example. But attendance, then effort. Like, are they engaged in what you're saying? And I think as a teacher, you can tell if somebody's engaged in your lesson. Right? You can
Mhm.
tell, and it's a lot harder in a history class or a math class. Let's be real. But you can tell if they're paying attention and they're focused. And you can do the same thing with football. And so those things are important when we are trying to figure out, are they in, right? Are
Yeah.
they in? How are they doing in the classroom? Are they buying into what we want to do in the classroom? Are they going to study hall? Like, are they going to their tutoring sessions? So all of that stuff creates that buy-in that we want to have in our program.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. A question I have, Coach, I love hearing people's answer to this because I don't know if there's a right or a wrong way, but let's say you take over a job, there's a couple good athletes who are really great players. They were really big contributors the previous year, but you are having issues with them when it comes to the new way or the culture or the new standard. How do you balance when enough is enough and you have to move on, but also, hey, they really need us. Like we need them probably, but they really need us. Like that's such a tough, a subjective thing that you got to find out. So what's kind of your outlook on that?
Well, first and foremost, with those guys that are quote unquote your headaches, right? When you call them out or say something in front of their teammates, they get defensive. So we like to have one-on-ones because then they get vulnerable. You pull them in the office. You're like, hey, it's just me and you. Like, what's the deal? Why can't you do this? Why aren't you buying in? Why aren't you listening? Why aren't you focused? Like, you don't want to go in and attack because now it feels like to them, it feels like you're attacking their manhood in front of their boys. Right.
Mhm.
So pull them aside and have those serious one-on-one conversations and see. And now you're getting to the root of the problem. well, I really like the old coach and he was my guy. Like, you get to the root of the problem
Yeah.
of what the issue truly is. Now, if that doesn't work the first time, you know, I got like a 3-strike approach for me, right? But the reality is you can't save them all. And
Yeah.
that sucks, and I hate it when it happens, and sometimes when you take over a program, somebody's gotta be the example, and somebody's gotta get kicked off because they just think they can keep getting away with the whatever they were doing in the past, and you gotta do it. So I kinda go with a 3-strike approach, but I kinda pull them aside so we're not kinda testing their manhood in front of their boys, and that's how we approach it, and every time that we've turned around a program, there's been one. There's been one that's the example. And like, yes, he would have helped us, you know, on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon. He would have helped us. He would have made some big plays. But it's like addition by subtraction. We got better because we got rid of the cancer, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense, man. And that kind of takes us into our next segment, which we're really going to get into like this case study piece. So, like, this is like how to fix things right now. And you may be in the similar situation. That's why we brought you in. But like, let's just say you have a team. They went 3-7 last year. They got no real clear quarterback, no clear starter, weak offensive line, culture's kind of down. Kids don't believe they can win. Probably sounds really familiar. But like, you start off and you're 0-3. Like what do you have to change there to try to get them to like come back?
Well, I think at that point you have to hit the reset button and pause.
Hmm.
Right. You have to pause it and then you have to get back to your why. And for us, like when we had a little slide at North Augusta where we weren't doing so well. On a Sunday afternoon meeting, instead of watching film and doing our rehab lift and all that stuff like we typically did, I stopped, I paused, we had a conversation about our why. Why do you play football? Everybody went around the room and our seniors shared and our coaches shared. And then when we got done with that for about 30 minutes, we took them out to a movie. Right.
Mm,
So, like, just get your mind off football. Let's reset. Let's get back to having fun with our boys because at the end of the day, this is a game. And so that's the way we kind of reset it there. And then it turned into 6 straight wins in a region championship. Right. So I don't know if that really helped, but it felt good. The players had fun with it. And they remembered, like, hey, man, this is a game. Like,
mhm.
yes, we all want to win and we all want to be successful, but it's a game. Let's have fun with it. Like, this game, it develops, you know, puts all this pressure on us, right? But really, what I tell our guys, like, pressure, like, this is a game, man. Have fun. Like, pressure is when the mortgage is due tomorrow and you ain't got enough money in your account and you got to figure it
Mhm.
out. Like,
Yeah.
that's pressure. Pressure is putting food on the table for your kids when you lose your job, right? That's
Yep.
pressure. So, like, this is a game, guys. Let's go back to having fun.
I love that, and I think it's what you're saying is, and we did this whole, like, E plus R equals O deal, and one of the R factors was, like, press pause, and just make sure that you are kinda seeing everything for what it is, but I love what you're talking about. You're pressing pause, and then you're trying to change the perspective of the team. Like, where are we at really? Okay, yeah, we're 0-3. We found ourselves like this in 2018 at York, and, I'm a new coordinator that year. We lose a close one to our rival in the opening week. The second game, we lose one we should have won, and then we got to go to Dorman. So then we're 0-3 with the bye week in there. So it's like 4 weeks we haven't won. We're like, what is going on here? And so I
Not
just
to
remember us,
mention the good
yeah,
Lord brought a hurricane, so we didn't have to play Rock
yeah, we
Hill
had to
that
play
year.
Rock Hill because we were
So
fixed to get beat again, and so we pressed pause. I remember that week, and it was like, look, guys, here's the perspective. Like, we're very very close. It was one of those things where we were just a few reps away from being pretty good, and we weren't super explosive on offense, so we had to find a way to like manufacture, ways to score, and it was just a really good thing. So we came out, very similar. I think we won 5 straight and finished second in the region that year to South Point. But yeah, I think it's important to press pause and then just try to like refocus the team, get them a different perspective. I love that.
no,
Yeah,
yep,
and, you know, like, when we did it at North Augusta, I mean, we were in a similar situation to you. Like, we started with Dorman, Greenwood, Dutch Fork, and
Mhm.
Evans, Georgia. And so, like, we were
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that was my
yeah,
first season, and I'm
yeah.
like, "Oh
That's
my
a tough.
gosh, like, this is
yeah.
the
Coach, you
Welcome
start
to the show.
you start 0-3. Who'd you play? Oh, coach, that's probably a good
That's
reason
probably
why you
why,
start.
guys.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
listen, we ain't playing those guys no more. Like,
It's okay. Yeah, no.
that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, coach, we're gonna add another layer to this. It's a case study we're trying to figure out. now you're going through your season, and it could be the same season or maybe a different season, but one of your best players is injured, and that could be 3 to 6 weeks out for the season. What is the mind shift as a staff, but also for the morale of your team? Like, how do you settle all the kids down? Because kids are the worst with, man, so-and-so's hurt, man, we're done now, So talk a little bit about your experience with that.
Well, I think when you started out, like we explained and we emphasized that everyone has a role, from starter to backup to scout team. Like everybody is important to the production and the progress of our program, right? So, scout team guys, your job is to make us better. You help us win. And we emphasize that. We celebrate those guys. And along with that, it's a next man up mentality that we start with by celebrating those guys and having them prepared. We coach them the same way from top to bottom, so that when something does happen, because it's football, it's going to happen. When something does happen, you pull in the next guy. Hey, next man up. You've been preparing for this moment. You've been getting coached the exact same way all year. Now it's your time to shine and your time to step up. And I think that comes from the mentors and guys that I had that did the same thing. Like my junior year in high school, I was still a backup going into week 6. Starter gets hurt, but I had been coached and trained and pushed the same exact way. Coach Brian Lane was my receivers coach. He had done the exact same things with the backup starters, scout team guys. And then they celebrated the success of those scout team guys. They celebrated the success of the backup. So it gave them confidence so that when they were thrust into that starting role against Dorman and it's 3rd and 12 and I got to catch the ball across the middle to seal the game, like I had the confidence. I had no business being in that game. I didn't know how to play receiver at that point. I was still a quarterback. But I go in there and we make the play because I was trained that way. And that starts with the way you set your culture and your foundation. And I think that has to be in the forefront of every coach's mind. Yes, we want all of our starters. Yeah, we want them to be healthy all 10 games. That would be fantastic. But the reality is somebody's going down. So you have to prepare for that. And how you prepare for that is pushing each other the same way that you push the starters, holding everybody to the same standards, and prepping them for those moments and celebrating their wins, whether that be a great week of practice or the scout team player of the week or however you want to call it, but celebrating those guys so they have confidence in that and their teammates have confidence in them.
And that's a testament to assistant or position coaches too, because that's something that as a head coach you can't necessarily directly impact the preparation for that backup. But what you can do is say, look, guys, everybody in your position group needs to prepare as if they are going to start. And that obviously, with quarterbacks, you only got 2 or 3 guys. In high school, you might only have 1. But like you think about like receivers, a big time receiver goes down, like you're saying, like you might be pulling from another position group or something like that. So, and then in high school too, if it's so thin, maybe even college at times, you got to cross train some kids and you got to have contingent plans. So the head coach can have some direct impact in that regard, because now they have to be able to manage personnel in a way that they're not going to be a big drop off if a guy goes down. That's a great insight.
I think that's something you talk about on Sundays, in my opinion, as you're game planning. All right, where's your injury report? Who's out? Who's banged up? All right, if he goes down, our center is going to move over to tackle. We'll bring in our next center. Like, what are the situations and scenarios? And you play those scenarios out with the staff so that everybody knows what's going on and who's coming in. And then I think it's important to be open and honest with our players about those plans.
Yes.
Let them know
Practice
what's
those
going on,
things. Yep.
why you're doing it. Practice those plans, right? We would have a period on our Thursday walkthrough where we're going down our walkthrough and Johnny got hurt. Who's up? And then they'd move and they knew what was going on and they had the confidence in being able to do that.
It's always like the quarterback or the holder, like in the most clutch that like you're trying to seal the
or
game.
The long
the
snapper.
Quarterback's in there, like crap. The backups quarterback's in there. He hasn't had any under center snaps.
Yeah.
We got to take it. It's like you got to be able to do those things. But yeah, that's
and
good
that's
stuff. Coach Martin.
No, that's one thing that we would do in Sunday meetings was we had a period where we addressed exterior concerns to personnel. So we wanted to talk about, were there any kids injuries? Were there any kids behavior? Were there any kids grades? Like outside of performance, like so-and-so's class, he's on the fence. Like we need to have a plan in case Thursday comes and coach said, hey, he can't play this week. But it's like, that is such a underrated thing that people don't think about. Like, how do we have the best plan for all these factors? Well, his ankle's banged up. Well, we need to have a plan. Well, dude, he's getting in trouble in class, and the principal's already said that if we don't, it's just there's so
Yeah.
many factors, and it's
He
like,
got ISS on Friday, coach. What do we do? Well, he can't play. What do you mean? What are we gonna do?
but coach, he was in school. He wasn't out of school, right? He's getting like it's.
When did he get suspended? No,
yeah, I've heard a kid say
wild.
that. But at after my first year at Cannon, I made a change in the way I coached that said I don't care. Our twos are going to get reps in every period. Every inside run they're getting in. Every team they're getting in. And some people don't agree with that. Like if there's 12 reps, twos are getting at least 4 for me. Like they have to because ones know what to do up here. It's just executing the translation.
We were watching South Carolina. Went to South Carolina's practice today, their spring practice, and they scripted out pretty well with that. So like they'll say twos, and then all the twos will run in, and it's some guys that wouldn't even play for our team. Like they're out there, they're getting the exact same amount of reps as Nick Harbor and all them guys. So it's if they could do it, I think high school guys can do it, and that builds into morale, and those guys get a chance to go make a play. But all right, coach. So next layer, man. Okay, let's say you're starting off slow, maybe you get it turned around, but best player gets injured, you're kind of battling. Layer 3, parents and community are starting to question some things. How do you handle that?
You have to stay calm and confident in your approach. Only as a coach, only you know what's best for your program. You have to block out the noise. There's always going to be fans and parents and so on and so forth in the stands yelling about what play, and that's fine. That's the profession we're in. I understand that. That means they're passionate about the program, right? One way or the other. But you have to block out the noise because you and your staff are the ones that are with them every single day. And so I've been a part of staffs and I've seen guys start to even come in and question, like, are we really doing the right thing? So-and-so said this on Facebook and whatever this. Like, dude, we're with them during the workouts. We're with them during practice. We see how they're doing. So you have to kind of put some blinders on. And I think I love social media and I love all the recruiting aspect and using social media, promote your program and all that. But I think that's the negative of social media is that it's given everyone a voice to share these things. And we have to be able to block that out and be confident in who we are. Like you have a plan, you have the goals in mind, you know what your team can do. So stay the course. Don't worry about the outside noise. And I'll take an extreme example, like the no punt coach at PC, right? Everybody was mad at him for his methods and his mentality and all that. And whether you agree with it or disagree with it is a whole conversation for another time. But what I liked about him was he stuck to his guns.
Yep.
He kept doing it. And it was like up 50, down 50, he would do it. And so he felt confident in it. He's with his team and he did it. And so I think that's important. Like even in that situation to be confident in who you are, what you do and how you do it, and then implement that and put the blinders on and block out all the outside noise.
And I think you have to teach that to your team as well. Like you have to teach the players, listen. And a big thing, Jamie talked about the E+R = O. Another thing that we try to teach is program alignment, and that's a part of that series. And it's like you show these big arrows, green and red, and what the right one looks like. And it's like explaining to the kids that adults are the biggest hindrance of program alignment, adults in general. Like it's not mom and dad, it's not people in the school or community, it's just adults in general, because all adults think that since they're an adult that their opinion is right and it matters. And it's like teaching them, listen, we're not saying don't listen to mom and dad, we're saying just understand what we're being taught within the program and what external factors look like who really don't know in the program. And it's like I think that's such a big piece in your leadership of teaching kids.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, that's why you see these big college programs or college programs in general clean house. And it's like Coach said before, like it's not that you're not a great coach and not a great human. It's like the fit piece. Like right now, I have a group of guys that are coming with me because I know they're all in on what we do. So if there is external noise, I can trust them to trust the process. And I think going back to what Coach Quinn talked about earlier of like establishing that framework, establishing that groundwork early. If you start getting all those bullets flying, now you got a little bit of armor with the culture that you built to go back to and reset with that perspective. I agree with that. All right, here's the next one, Coach. locker room's divided now. Okay, maybe some of his first year, we came in late, maybe so the culture wasn't right where we needed it to be, but we had to play. Locker room starts to divide. Some kids are bought in, some haven't. How do you go about that and addressing it with the team?
Well, I think that's when you got to have a serious conversation with your team. And then when you find the problems and you figure out what the problems is, and I think as you develop those relationships, um, even if it's only one guy, there's one guy in the locker room, regardless of when you get there, that you can trust, and you find that guy. And then you have that conversation with him. Hey, what's going on? Why is there a divide? And lean on them because they're in the locker room, right? They're listening to their buddies. They're in the Instagram group chats, right? So what is going on and what can we do to fix it? And I think the value of listening to some seniors, some leaders, some captains, I think that's often overlooked. I think we should lean on, like, we can say that the kids don't know anything, they're dumb, or like they're smarter than we all think. Like they know what's going on and they can smell BS all day long, right? So lean on those guys and figure out where the divide is and what we can do to fix it. And then as a staff, you meet and say, all right, we're having issues with these three guys. They're not in, they're splitting the locker room. Let's pull them in one-on-one. And if you continue to have those one-on-one private conversations and building the relationships throughout the process, people start beginning to trust you. And I think that just comes down to establishing that culture and getting back to the trust aspect. Coach Scott Early used to have a saying that when we were coaching together, he said, these kids spell love Time. So how much time are you putting in with them, right? How much time are you going forth and going out of your way? Are you going to always talking about football? Is it always, hey, you should have done this on this route, or you should have, cut the backside or whatever? Like, is it always football, or are you actually invested in them as a human being? And so establishing that trust in those relationships will help with those division issues.
Yeah.
And then again, we've said it before tonight, like there's going to be times where you have to pull the cancer from the body, and it is what it is. And that sucks, especially when they're a funny kid and they're great to be around. They just can't get right. Everybody's had a can't get right on their
Can't
team,
get
right?
right. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
no
makes
doubt
sense,
about
and it's
that.
never too late to build that relationship. I think we've all had scenarios where that buy-in may come late, or it's enough buy-in to get through the year. It ain't got to be, let's be, Johnny goody two shoes here, but like we need to be. There's some standards that you're going to have to meet for you to continue to be on the football team, and one of them is probably not talking outside this wall about what goes on. But those are some tough ones, man. You nailed them, by the way. So those are great insight with how things could potentially
I
go.
appreciate it. I think, the biggest thing too that I didn't add in some of that, and it kind of goes with everything that we talked about, is we establish player contracts and we lay out as many scenarios. It's impossible to list everything that a kid could do wrong, right? But we lay out as many scenarios. We have a social media policy. Like, don't get on social media and run your mouth about the team. That's detrimental to the team. Like, there's everything that we could think of, and we add to it every year. Don't get me wrong, but
Right.
we try to go through that and hold them to that, and they say, look, then we have something to talk to them about when they violate team rules. Like, coach, I didn't know. Well, I pull out that contract. I have it filed in my desk. Like, look, you signed it right here. You knew, because you signed this paper, you're telling me that you knew what the contract said and what the expectation was. So now here's the punishment for breaking that rule. And so there's no discrepancy in,
Right.
well, I shouldn't be running this, or I shouldn't have to do that. Like, I shouldn't be kicked off the team. Well, you knew the violation of the rules because we set forth a team contract at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's even beyond. I think something as simple as a contract these days don't mean anything like it used to. And I think to have people who hold that, like, you would be shocked. I've worked in schools where like parents have to sign an acknowledgement button for a link for the school handbook, and when their student gets in trouble for IDs or something, they're the first person up at the school. Like, why is my kid in ISS? Well, they had 5 tardies, and that's an ISS. Well, where's that at? The handbook that you had to sign a link that said you read the handbook and you understood it. Like, it's you think it's as simple as, oh man, I watched the movie Coach Carter growing up. He had contracts. I'm doing that. It's not that simple. Like it has gone. And I mean, there's even adults with work contracts who don't fulfill it, and they're kind of upset when there's consequences, and it's like,
Man, I read every
it's-
line of my teacher contract every year just to
Oh,
make
yeah.
sure not.
Well, it's like you said. I mean, the contracts are only as good as the person enforcing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
So,
100%.
and it's like I tell our assistant coaches, like, all right, if you have this rule in your position group, you're coaching receivers, and if you have a rule that if they drop a pass, they got 10 push-ups, the very first time you let that slide, you have negated everything that you've done.
Mhm.
So you have to do it all the time. If you make a rule, you have to enforce it every time, every player, starter, backup, scout team guy, doesn't matter, because if you let the starter get away with it, but you enforce it with the backup, now you're creating the division yourself. That
Yep.
division that's going to happen in the locker room, you're creating it yourself. When, Johnny doesn't show up to workouts and he doesn't have to do any extra running, but when the backup didn't show up, he had to stay after and he was puking because he was running stadiums. Like, and then that divides them. Coach is playing favorites and he just doesn't care about that. Like, no, you have to enforce everything that you do. And
Yep.
if you say it, you got to mean it, because the first time that you break that, you've lost the trust.
That's exactly
You've
right.
lost the trust.
Yeah, that's like Lou Holtz, he said, "Man, I don't have a whole lot of rules," because he knew that he'd have to follow through on them and with the punishment. So, say, "Hey, man,
Yeah.
don't make a bunch of dang
And
rules here."
I think that's a good thing also, like what you're saying, Coach, is as a coach, don't pigeonhole yourself. Like,
Yeah.
don't put yourself in a situation where,
What are you willing to die on the
like,
hill for?
yeah, well, it's like, okay, so-and-so missed practice and it's validated. He had a immediate family member funeral that he had to be at. And then you got so-and-so that mom said he had a fever. Like, those are two different situations.
Had
But
to go shop for school clothes, Coach.
if you write it, I mean, if you write it black and white that if you miss practice, this is the consequence. Well, then you have to hold both of those situations the exact same. So I think it's important also, like, have your standards, expectations, but don't pigeonhole yourself to
Yes.
hurt yourself.
And that's kind of why we go into those conversations with our coaches. I'm like, look, you can set all the rules you want in your position group and all the standards, whatever, but just understand that you're the one in charge of enforcing it. And if you say it, you're going to do it. And that's just my expectation for you. And so, there's certain things that I just won't die on the hill for. We had a coach one time that was like, you can't wear towels at practice. And if a kid showed up with a towel, I'm like, dude, like, I'm not dying on that hill. I am not going to fight
like,
that
that's
every day.
like, come on, man.
I'm not.
Yeah.
It's just little stuff, like just nitpicky stuff that I think, like, kids are going to be kids, and you got to let them be kids. And all the swag and the drip and all that stuff they wear, some coaches get upset about. I'm like, man, if it's team colors, like, I'm cool with it. Like, I ain't gonna have no orange or green out there, but like, if it's team colors, like, let them have fun.
Let them
Like,
rock it, man. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And each coach has their own thing. It's like I kind of feel bad for the coaches that are like really uptight about those things, and like, man, I guess we've all been there at some degree, but yeah, man.
Hey,
All
man,
right,
I'm
so,
gonna tell you this: I'm letting my kicker wear whatever cleats he wants, but so
No
he kicks the
doubt.
ball better.
No doubt.
Like, he don't have to look like us. Like, you know what I mean? It's like there's
kickers are
certain
different now.
things. Yeah. Oh, but I'm saying like
different.
I ain't gonna let the star receiver wear orange cleats, but like the
Right.
kicker, you wear whatever you want, dude.
How
Like,
good is this receiver we got? Is he like real good, or is he like there's a sliding scale? Like, here's the thing, like, well, Coach, last year you said we only had to wear team colors, but this year we can wear whatever we want. Well, yeah, because Johnny Superstar over there, he wants to wear orange, so everybody can wear orange.
Yeah.
But no. All right, Coach. So here's another one. Okay, we got another little case study for you. This is about recruiting and like what you look at from a prospect standpoint. So to help us high school guys out, just kind of see where your mind is, we're going to give you 4 different prospect types, and we're going to give them like a couple of different attributes, and you try to tell us, what your thoughts are on them. So the first prospect, he is a player with great stats. Okay, average measurables, but really high character. How do you go about? Is he an offerable kid?
Yes, absolutely. I think academics and character come first. And if you have those traits, whether you come in and you're an all conference player or not, like, you're going to add positivity to the program and to the culture. And so for us, like, in my opinion, you have to be able to do something good. if you're a super athletic kid, but your grades slip, like you got to bring something to the table, right? If you have high grades, but you're not as good of a player, but you got great character, like you're bringing something to the table and bringing something to the team. And so, character and academics is definitely there. And we can find a place for you. You got decent stats. You're maybe not the biggest guy or the fastest guy, but there's a special teams. There's something that we can get you on. There's a way that you can help our program. And even if it's, being a locker room leader because you got that character trait, right?
Sure.
Love that. Everybody's
when
got a
you're
role. Love it.
Yeah, when you're recruiting high school kids, coach, this is something I've always had questions on that I'd like to ask is like, how much does high school stats really matter? Because like, do you evaluate the opponents they're playing, or is it more about production? Like, okay, yeah, that kid has 1,400 yards, but they've also played the homeschool that put a team together through the Salvation Army. Or is it, but that kid has 33 touchdowns. He knows how to score. You know what I mean? Like, talk about that a little bit.
I mean, obviously everybody's going to peek at the stats, but like you said, opponents do matter, and then being in Virginia is a little bit more difficult because I don't know these schools, but like if I see a kid's film and he had 80 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns against Dutch Fork, I'm like, all right, that's pretty good, but if then they turn it around and have 200 against a lower level team or whatever, like those stats are stats. Like I think we can get caught up too much on stats. Let's look at the actual film, how they move, how they run, and we want to find their best trait. Like even in recruiting, we want to find their best trait and how does that fit into the piece of our puzzle? What we need right now, what can they bring to the program outside of football, but also what can they bring to it inside of football? Are they a speed guy? Can they help us with return? Are they going to help us on special teams? Are they going to be a contributor immediately? Like all those things matter. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in stats because guys that just go straight off of stats, like we look at them, but guys that go straight off of stats may overlook somebody. I recruited a kid out of Virginia and he signed and committed and he had, maybe 14 catches. If I had never looked at his film, I wouldn't have known they were in the wing tee offense and they threw the ball about twice a game. Right. So stats can be overrated at times too.
Yeah, we've seen that too, where a kid gets offered as a different position than he played on film, because camp or how they moved on film and that kind of thing. So yeah, that was going to be my thing too. Like probably factors into, do they have a good quarterback that can throw it? Do they have a good offensive line? And that could be good or bad for a for a guy who's got an elite offensive line. Any running back could do well. But all right, here's the second prospect. Here we go. Elite athlete. I'm talking about like top of the top that you would recruit. Poor effort on film and questionable body language. Yeah, man. Got him.
That one's tough.
Elite athlete.
I think this is where, Coach, and I'm going to let you speak, but I think this is where the high school head coach's opinion really makes a big factor.
Yeah, this is the high school head coach guy.
That's when it comes down to, you're right. I mean, talking to the coaches, talking to their high school coaches. But now, do you have a GPA on this kid? Like, what is his GPA?
Yeah. Let's just say he's going to be eligible D2 and up. So what is that? 2.2 core GPA.
Yeah. Whew, that's going to come down to like recommendations at that point. Like I can see what he can do on film and we like the athletic side, but then we really get to the conversation with the coach or the athletic director or the guidance counselor, somebody in the building that knows them and can attest to what they do and how they do it. Because if you're an elite athlete, but you're going to be a headache off the field and you're going to be partying and you're going to be missing classes, like you're going to end up ineligible anyway. So I don't want to waste my time and invest in that. So I think that's going to come down to that recommendation, just off the hoof there with the example. I would be, probably 70% no on that. But then it could change based on the recommendations and what they say. Well, you might get a recommendation from a coach that's like, Coach, I know this guy. He had a really tough home life. He didn't have a father figure, male in his life. I think you could help him. He's a good kid deep down. You just got to be able to reach him. Like, then I'm like, okay, we'll
gives you
take
some
that.
hope.
Yeah.
I think I think that I've had those scenarios before too, where, you got to tell the truth about a kid, but you also want to maybe shed some light on either the context and seeing if that's something that I always like to give the context in case that coach feels like he can relate to that situation in a way or
Mhm.
feel like he has someone to I got a guy on staff that would be perfect for this kid,
Mhm.
or I have a older guy on roster that can help bring this kid along. Like our leadership or our culture is so sound, we feel like we can take a chance that if he
Mhm.
doesn't fall in line, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's I'm sure there's all kinds of variables
And
when it
that's a
comes to
great
that.
point that you just said, and you made me think too, like, if you're 3 years into this, like 3
Mhm.
years from now
Mhm.
at Averett University, I might take that chance. But
Yep.
in year 1, is it gonna help our
Yeah.
culture right now?
That's
Yeah.
it.
Right? So that's
That's
a good
what's
point.
most important to you right
Yeah.
now. Yes.
Yeah, because I even know that some, colleges now have the freshman teams. And so, like, if you have a freshman team where you have a big leadership
Mhm.
introduction to college and being a grown man and all those things, it may be someone like you're like, okay, yeah, this guy could really be great for us as long as he goes through this. That's good. All right, coach. Third one. Okay, you got a kid. He's undersized in height, may not be the weight he needs to be, but he's extremely tough, very high level football IQ. How do you go about evaluating him?
I think size is overrated.
Mm,
I think if you can play and you're knowledgeable of the game, like undersized receivers, right? But if they understand coverage and they understand soft spots in the zone and they can sit down against, whatever coverage, right? I think that is extremely important, especially in what we want to do offensively. But if they're a good fit for you, they're a good fit. I think the size thing just gets blown out of proportion, man.
mm,
And this is
mm,
coming from the high school side of me because I've got kids that I had in the past who are like, Coach, I'm telling you, he can play for you. He can play for you. But we only recruit, linemen that are 6'3". Well, he's 6'1" and a half, but he is bulldozing Greenwood and Dutch Fork. Like, what are we doing here? Like, so I think the film is what you really need to go off of. And the measurables are great. And yeah, you do have to have some size and space in certain spaces, but it's okay to have those few that are just high IQ guys that can play and fit in your system and take a chance on them. Right? Like get in if it's a guy that needs to gain weight, he's gonna have a meal plan. Freshmen are gonna gain 15 pounds. They haven't been in a weight room program like this. Like, well, I'll say that with the state of South Carolina, they probably have been in a weight room program like that for the most part, the way everything's turning now. But you understand, like when they get
Mhm.
out on their own and they're gonna naturally gain weight. So we don't focus too much on that. Like if you can play, you can play, and if you can't, you can't. And the height and the size is kind of secondary, even third in line for us when we go to evaluate.
Yeah, I think that's it goes back to I forgot who talked about this, but maybe it was Kurt Signetti. He said that when he recruits, he doesn't recruit based on potential. He recruits based on production. And so that with that kind of kid, when you're watching that film, you could see his toughness. You could see high football IQ, you know, but there might be another prospect that, man, he's 6'4", whatever. And I think we could turn this guy into something like super special. So I'm with you. I think if you can see that toughness and that football IQ, like right up front, yeah, I'm with you on that. All right. Next one, coach. Prospect number 4, big time highlights, but weak competition. Maybe you saw him in camp, didn't really compete against his peers very well, or didn't really, when you watch not the non-highlight tape, he's not really competing at that level. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's where an in-person evaluation is very important.
Mhm.
So if you see him at camp and then you try to get him matched up against some of the dogs, right? If he's a
yeah.
receiver, you try to find the best DB there and like kind of get them together in a one-on-one setting and see. I think that might be the toughest, thing when you don't know. Like I'm dealing with some of that in Virginia. Luckily, my offensive line coach knows the state of Virginia and the competition levels. But when I'm evaluating, I'm like, hey, this kid's balling out here. And it's like, well, coach, that's private school 1A football, and there's only 14 guys on the team. I'm like, oh, okay, my bad. So, uh, that's the toughest part is, we talked about those inflated stats, right?
Yes.
Are they doing it the right way, but are they able to do it at a higher level? Like you got to find out with those in-person evaluations with those type of guys. Get on campus. If they won't come to a camp or they don't go to camps or they can't afford to go to camps for whatever reason, right? Get to their high school. Go watch
Mm,
their PE class. Like
Mhm.
95% of schools now have a PE class where they're doing something athletic, even if they're just playing basketball. I can go in there and see how they move and how they run. So I think that would be the one that you really have to hone in on and evaluate. And then, what other intangibles does he bring? Is he a great student, and is he a high character? Is he a leader? Is he a captain? But he's just playing against weak competition. Well, then we can kind of that bumps his grade up for us, in my opinion.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, no, um, we kind of ran into that issue when I was at Canon some because we felt like, you know, we had a really good young roster and we were playing in what would typically be a fairly competitive region. But I think outside of that, I think it was a lot more competitive. Like there's just better players. And so my opinion was I'd been around them for a while, so I knew that these guys could play at 3A, 4A ball and be just as productive. It was really hard for me to sell that to the college recruit. But to their credit, they recruited their tails off to the point where they did their evaluations. Like they had to come in, they had to bring them on campus, they had to meet mom and dad, they had to do the extra steps because they're not playing at a Dutch Ford, they're not playing at a Rock Hill where you're playing 5A ball against the best in the state, South Carolina. It's just, it's definitely harder to recruit a kid like that. But you probably put more investment in that kid. But what do you think high school coaches misunderstand a lot about recruiting now that you're on that side of it?
Man, I think that there's a misunderstanding with the level of play. Okay, so NAIA, D3, D2, D1, I think there's I encourage guys like, oh, I used to have kids too. It's like, I can play D3 ball, coach. I can play there. Like, okay, all right, the Stag Bowl's coming on this weekend. Watch that. Tell me whose job you're taking. Like, I think that's a misunderstanding. And
Yep.
then I think, and I was guilty of this. So I was guilty of putting the blinders on. You got that kid that's a really good player for you, and you're like, you love him to death, and you've got that relationship with him. So you're selling him and you're selling him, and they just won't take the opportunity. But you, as the high school head coach, don't see the other 500 guys that he's being compared to,
Yep.
right? We just have those blinders on. So I think, and that's not a bad thing. You're supposed to advocate for your guys. You're supposed to love your guys and promote your guys, right? But I think that's something that is misunderstood. Why didn't they offer my guy? Like, he's a good player and he's a great kid. And like, yeah, but you don't know. There might have been a guy that's exactly the same as him, but he had a 4.0 GPA instead of a 3.2.
Yeah.
3.2 ain't bad, but
Sure.
we got to take that 4.0 and get that extra academic money, right?
Exactly.
And I like the coaches who are like brutally honest, I guess. I'll never forget the coach. He's no longer there. Obviously, it's a completely new staff, but App State came by and I was selling a kid that we had. And he said, Coach, that's what we call a wifer. I was like, he said, you ever heard that? I was like, what's that mean, Coach? He said, my wife does not know anything about football and she would have to be impressed for me to offer a kid like that. And I was like, enough said, Coach. I appreciate that.
I had one of those too, man.
And like,
I've had one of those.
I think it was just based off of size and measurables. Like, yeah, man, at our level with who we're recruiting, like that kid would absolutely impress my wife who don't know anything about football for me to even be able to offer that kid.
I was
like,
at a
good enough. Good
I
enough.
was at a school one time, and this parent was on me bad about, hey man, we got to get my boy recruited and all this stuff. And coach comes by, he's already been to their camp, and I'm like, hey man, you guys gonna pull the trigger on this guy or what? And he said, Coach, let me look up something real quick. Got his iPad out, went to the camp data. He said, Coach, this kid ran a 4.62. He can't play ACC ball. So that was it. That's all he said. So that's fine. That's all I need to take. And I took it back, But yeah, it's just, it's a tough game, man. It's a tough game. But man, Coach, this has been excellent. This is you've so full disclosure for our listeners, we did not give this to Coach at all, and it felt like he was just crushing all these. So, man, we appreciate you being on, and this is definitely a fun episode for us. Hope it was for you, man. We haven't done one like this. Maybe we'll do another one in the future.
Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. I like playing the scenarios, and even I think just hearing you guys speak and share some of your thoughts. Like, I think coaches can learn something from everybody. Like, I think we should all be lifelong learners. I can learn something from you guys. I can pick up something from college football on Saturday, NFL, high school, middle school. Like, there's something that we can learn from everybody. And I love the fact that you guys are doing this so other coaches can learn. Maybe what I say doesn't apply to your program, but you picked up some type of quote or some nugget that I dropped
100%.
that you can. And I think that's what gets overlooked in clinics. Like, we go in there and we listen to, South Carolina speak when I'm coaching at Chesterfield, and I'm like, this is the SEC and this ain't going to work at Chesterfield, right? But then they keep going. I'm like, hey, just focus, pay attention. There's something that he's going to say that we can implement and we can use in our program. And I think that's important. And I think that's kind of what I get from you guys' podcast with former guests that you guys have had, for sure.
Yeah. When and if I become a head coach again down the road, there's probably going to be episode 2, 17, 48, 63, 22, all is who my program's going to be. Because like you said, it's like sometimes, man, like, this is a really great thing, but sometimes I'll be sitting there like, dude, this is like paralysis by analysis. I'm taking all these. I'm like, dude, this is great stuff.
This is awesome.
It is. Yep. And to get, I love the stuff like this because it's situational based and how do you handle it, specifically who you are, what you've learned along the way, because those are where I learn the most. Me and Jamie, we feel like we're process people. So we want to know, how do other people process this stuff? It's kind of like scheme wise, like, not saying I don't study scheme as much anymore, but I'm in that packaging process world right now. Like, how do you package it? How do you get the most out of the least? And how do you teach it to your players? And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do, especially an episode like this. Like, Coach, you did a great job.
Man, excellent.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. I think the biggest thing I want to leave our coaches with that may be listening is relationships, man. Yep. Don't sacrifice relationships for scheme. That's the biggest thing, man. I think in my resume and my beliefs and my philosophy and my manual that I give our coaches, it says relationships win more games than scheme. And I firmly believe that, and I think that it's proven itself through my career, through Coach Bentley's career, through Coach Lane's career. Same guys. Coach Tate, same way. Coach Chris Miller, same way. Like, these are the guys that I studied and I was under, and I just tried to take pieces from all them and implement it in my own way. And but at the end of the day, man, it's relationships, and that's what really matters.
Well said, Coach. And we appreciate all those words, and I'm sure our listeners, I know me and Dustin are going to take these back and implement them into our process for sure.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Go Cougars.
Thanks for tuning into the CoachSpeak podcast. If you're interested in being a guest speaker on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at coachspeakpodcast1@gmail.com. And if you have a question for our Q&A segment, don't forget to submit it through the form in the episode description. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.